1. Background. I'm a single mother of 2. One is 5 and the other was just born 3 days when this happened, so I was grumpy, tired, and just wanted to get the tattoo and go to sleep. This is probably important to remember. Lil's boyfriend took care of my kids while this was happening. Lil's looks strong when she isn't, and I look weak when I'm actually pretty strong. Also, Lil's is about 6'8", and I'm 4'3", also English isn't my first language. Now to the story. So I went to the public tattoo place with my friend. When we went in, we only saw 3 people. NG, PK, and EM. So we tried to sit down, but before we could, EM put her bags on the only 2 seats left. I thought she didn't notice it, so I asked her to move them, but nope. Here's the conversation. Can you move your bags, please? Don't worry, I'll move them when customers come in. I'm confused but know where this is going. But we are customers. She then just looks in one of her bags and brings out some food. Here, sweetie, want a sandwich? Mum, can you move your bags? The tall people want to sit down. Sweetie, they are employees. But if they're just gonna stand there, I think they'll get fired. Lils moves the bags herself because she just wants to sit and wait. How dare you, I'm telling your manager. She walks into the staff-only room with PK. NG's laughing his head off. Some people, am I right? Yeah. I really feel sorry for the kid. 3 minutes later, the staff come back. I'm sorry to inform you that the manager will be here to open the doors to the tattoo area, but he's talking to a crazy lady complaining while her kid looks like she's nearly about to cry. Great. Lils rolls her eyes. Okay, now I'm feeling nervous, not only because of the EM, or the tattoo, but because the manager was one of my ex-boyfriends. Ex-boyfriend, manager, PK, and EM walk in. Who has been disrespectful and assaulted this poor lady's kid? EM points at my friend, since she looks strong. She assaulted my child, and now she has bruises on her legs, and you can see where she punched her in the head. Then she points at me, and she threw my bags to the floor and called me a bitch. XBM looks at me and Lils, trying to hold his laughter. Did the tall one pick up your child and give her bruises on her waist? Yes, nearly forgot about that. XBM now definitely knows this is bull. Well, unless Lils has been going down the gym every day, and me is drunk, then this is worse than when you said my brother kicked your child and ran off. His brother is disabled and has mental problems. EM's now red with anger. I command you to fire them! Well, you're fired, EM. She's confused. But I don't work here. Exactly, and they don't work here either. By this point, NG, me, and Lils are standing up, nearly laughing our asses off. EM pushes me onto the ground, where I hit my head on the wall and faint. The rest I knew from NG, XBM, and Lils, who informed me the rest. Mummy, stop! Now she's crying her eyes out and runs up to me and Lils and hides behind Lils and checks if I'm okay. Come here, you little brat. She tries to push Lils to get to PK. Not so fast, says NG. He gets pushed, but he's still standing. You're not hurting anyone else. At this point, the police arrive. XBM called the police when he heard one of his employees assaulted someone. What's going on here? This crazy lady pushed my friend and she fainted. And I think this lady might be abusing her child. Apparently the police took her away, and my friend, NG, XBM, were took into questioning, and I was taken to the hospital. I wasn't in questioning because they had enough proof, so she got fined, jail time, and her child is in foster care. Lils and her boyfriend are looking after PK as foster parents since they felt sorry for her. I was in hospital for a week and I'm still taking therapy for what happened, among other things. I never got my tattoo and I don't know if I should. 2. So some backstory. I deliver newspapers. I work 7 nights a week with no breaks at all. This is important later for a story. I deliver to apartments, where I have to get out and walk to your doorstep, or at least close enough to throw it at your doorstep. I deliver to houses, where I just throw the paper out of the window. And I deliver to senior homes, where I take all the papers and deliver it from door to door on foot. I have encountered so many stupid people, but these are a few of those encounters. Delivering along houses, I have encountered joggers with dogs without leashes that do not listen to the owner, and would run out in front of me. Thankfully, I pay attention and stop. The owner jumps out in front of me trying to play police officer by giving me instructions. I almost want to roll my window down and tell them to parent their dog better, and both our times wouldn't be wasted. Seriously, keep your dogs on a leash if you walk, especially if they don't listen to you at all times. I went into a senior home to make deliveries. I have to be let in by a receptionist, and she was going on at how this drink machine, push a button and it combines powder and hot water to make a drink, didn't have any water in it, it was just dispensing powder. I was trying to joke around with her, suggesting that her coffee must be really strong then. She didn't get it at all. I tried to explain if there's no water in the mix, it would just be the coffee mix. Still didn't get it. Then she starts saying it's after midnight, it's not a good time to tease me like this, and I don't know what it's like to work 5 days in a row. Internally I'm thinking, really? I have to do everything not to laugh at her, but simply replied, try 7. She started to protest, but you saw the point where her brain told her to shut the hell up. Delivering along houses, I came up to a couple of women, exercising. They saw me coming, and they would actually plant their feet on the side of the road, with their back facing the house of the side of the road they are on, and lay on the ground to do push-ups. Yes, they are putting their bodies further in the road, even though they see me coming. Went into the same senior home I mentioned before, but the receptionist was nowhere to be seen, different one, and the door improperly locked. Turn dial deadbolt. I deliver and leave. I'm stopped by the receptionist outside who is smoking. She shall be called dipshit. Who let you in? I did. How did you get in? Through the door. Internally I'm thinking, obviously. Was it locked? I'm thinking, yes, but I'm a metal bender. No, and I leave. People parking by the side and dead-end roads that I have to drive down, preventing me from entering, and then getting pissed when they see me leave shortly after because I forced them to move. Mostly construction workers and cops. But the cops don't express annoyance, at least, as far as I could tell. No outlet private roads where people park on the side of the street too far away from the curb, leaving it impossible to pass. Joke's on them, I'd drive through your lawn. 3. I'll start off by saying that this is technically more of an I do work here, but this is my day off story. I live near a rather popular but small party town. Every day during the summer, and every Friday and Saturday outside the summer, the bars and clubs open up, and a ton of both locals and tourists come to party it up. Since the region is quite spaced out, and we're not in the US, where 2 hours is considered a casual drive, most partygoers opt to call a cab to get to and from the clubs. This is usually where I come in. See, my boss really loves New York, so he imports second-hand New York taxis to use here. Since we're the only ones in the country driving them, and we have the cheapest rates of all the cab companies around, we're the most popular and often the first someone will call if they need a cab. Now, the part about us driving New York taxis is kind of important, because these cabs are incredibly out of place and easy to spot. They're bright yellow, having large printing on them of the company name and the phone number. They have the little sign on the roof, and have a specially colored license plate that indicates that it is a legit taxi. Now, I had the day off since it was Friday during the winter, so there isn't enough to do for both me and my colleague, so we take turns every other week. I'm not much of a party animal or drinker. For the fact so, even on my days off, I'd rather just stay at home and play video games. This night I was at home when I got a call from a group of friends that were out partying. They stupidly convinced the friend that was supposed to be their designated driver to have a few beers with them. And things got out of hand, so they asked me if I could pick them up. I said sure and got in my mom's car, my own car only having 1 passenger seat. Now remember what I said about the New York taxis a few lines back. Yeah, my mom's car did not tick any of those boxes. It's a large greyish Volvo station wagon, obviously with no signs or the appropriate license plate to be a taxi. I get to the clubs about 15 minutes before they close. Locals with a sense of how the taxi rush works when all the clubs close are smart enough to leave early so they have an easier time finding a cab that's available. Of course, while these people are just barely smart enough to figure this out, they are also too drunk to have a decent eye for detail. To them, any car that parks in front of or near the clubs is a taxi to them. Just like I do when I'm actually on the clock, I lock my doors, intending to only open them once my friends are here. But unfortunately, my mom's car is getting older, and the back doors didn't lock properly. Before I have a chance to react, 4 drunkards shove themselves in my back seat. One of them even reaches to the front and unlocks the front passenger door for 2 other guys. Now I'm taken aback by this display, but the act of unlocking the door really gets me. I already hate it when people do this when I'm working, so for them to do it when I'm not is even worse. My boss does not subscribe to the customer is always right mentality. When we're driving, we are king, and our cab is our kingdom. You can enter my cab when I allow it. Now I have 6 randos in a car meant for 4 passengers, and I'm trying to tell them to get out, but they're all singing like loud drunks do so they don't hear me. As I'm trying to get through, I do hear bits through the singing of one guy drunkenly telling me where they need to go, and after a few repeats he gets more irate as I'm obviously not going anywhere. I give the volume knob on my radio a good spin, and the short blast of sound is successful at shutting these dipshits up. With them all quiet now, I tell them again that they need to get out as I'm not taking them anywhere. They get pissy. Just tell me to drive and not worry about it. As they apparently completely misunderstood what I said, I repeat that they need to get the fuck out of my car, I'm not a taxi. 2 of them say they recognize me from last week, which is entirely possible since I was working last week. So I'm obviously a taxi driver, and I just need to take them home. Note that I never actually understood the guy that was telling me where they wanted to go, so even if I wanted to, which I didn't, I had no idea where home was. They tell me to take them to the same place I brought them last week. Now, I am absolutely horrible with faces. Add to this the fact that I am a very down-to-business person, so I tend to not really look at the faces of my passengers. So even if I did indeed bring them home last week, I wouldn't for the life of me know where that was a week later, since I had no idea who these assholes were. I tell them that even if I knew where they needed to go, I am not a taxi driver and they need to get out. Also, even if I was a taxi driver, at least one person would need to get out, since the New York taxis only have seats for 5 passengers. Now comes the icing on the cake. One of the drunkards in the back seat decides that now is an amazing time to throw up in my mom's car. I'm livid, but decide to take the middle road between private and work policy. At my work, we have a few policies regarding the stuff that goes on in the taxis. Some obvious, some less. First, no alcohol, especially since Germans don't seem to understand, and no glass bottles. Especially prohibited by law since it can be used as a weapon. Second, no smoking or vaping. Third, no touching the driver. 4, if you throw up, you either clean it up or you pay €100. Some of these jerks were far too gone to clean it up, and were more likely to just make it worse. The absence of tools to clean it with didn't help at all either. I repeat again that they need to get out of my car, and I add that they need to pay me €100. The guys that apparently rode with me before were aware of the €100 policy and were obviously still under the impression that I was on the clock. But they were still hesitant to pay since, obviously, €100 is quite a lot of money for twats their age. They start making a scene which rocks my car all over the place, attracting the attention of 2 police officers. With how busy the clubs can get, the area is heavily patrolled during party hours. They come over and ask me what's happening. One of them bends over and looks into the car, seeing the passengers all packed like sardines. "You know you're not allowed to drive like this, right?" "I know, I wasn't going to, but these jerks won't get out, and they threw up in the back." "May I see your cab license?" "I'm not here as a cab driver, I was just here to pick up some friends, which these guys are not." One of the police officers has seen me before and checks my dashboard. No tachometer, she checks my license plate, which obviously is just a regular plate. And she notes my frustration at the people in my car. A few minutes later, my friends finally arrive to the sight of 2 cops pulling drunks out of my car, with one yelling at me why I don't want to make money. I believe another yelled the classic, "We pay your salary!" comment. Which, spoiler warning, they don't. Most of the company's income comes from special reservations, and I get paid by the hour, not customer. So their contribution to my salary is minimal to non-existent. I, for some reason now lost to me, try to explain this to them, which was like explaining the concept of Schrodinger's cat to an actual cat, with how drunk some of them were. The cops, blessed as they are, knew all too well how annoying it was to clean puke from fabric, so they enforced the technically not applicable to my situation policy of €100 for throwing up in my car. My friends get in the car, luckily, with 3, no one had to sit in the puke, and I thank the officers for their help and want to drive off, but not before checking my rearview mirror where I see these guys angrily walking towards another cab. A bright yellow cab. My colleague who was actually on shift. I quickly grab my phone, I wasn't driving yet, and I open an app we use for work that basically turns your phone into a walkie-talkie, hoping my colleague decided to log in despite being on his own tonight. He was. I quickly tell him not to take these people with him. The mention of the vomit was all the confirmation my colleague needed to leave these guys standing. With the other cab companies already swamped with reservations, I can already imagine how long these guys had to wait for a cab to pick them up. At least it would give them time to sober up. In the end, my friends and I are driving home. I'm still somewhat irate, but we managed to have a laugh, only soured somewhat by the equally sour smell coming from the back. We get home, my friends pass out on the couch, I clean the vomit before it sets, and put 80 out of the €100 underneath my mom's phone in the living room, since it was her car. Epilogue. The next day, my mom was not happy after hearing the story, but there was no trace of the vomit, and she got €80 out of it. I did receive an email from my boss asking for my side of the story regarding a complaint he received on a day I wasn't even working. He promptly trashed the complaint after hearing my side, and that's, honestly, the last I heard about it. My friends each chipped in a 20 and bought me a game for the help in trouble. So now I'm playing Breath of the Wild. 4. This happened last year, but as my friend got asked about it yesterday, I figured I would share. My one friend is very religious, and is part of all things church as far as I know. So when they have plays or concerts, they just call them performances, she is always a part of them. Which means as her ever-loyal friend, she asks/requires me to attend at least one performance of each she does that year. Last Christmas season, I ended up going to like 15 of the 30+ performances. They would do 2 a night. Well, the time in question was when I had ended up attending the performance after several hours of me playing an elf at an event that another friend asked me to help her with. So there I was, dressed like an elf, going to support my friend's church performance. I was tired. In the line in front of me was this couple and their 3 kids. And the kids were going pretty much insane. They were yelling, screaming, and running around. One even tried to climb on a nearby chair. The parents would switch which one would chase the running kids around, as they were trying very hard to get their children under control. I groaned, forgetting I was still dressed as an elf. I loudly said, "Santa is not going to be happy when he hears how you guys are misbehaving." The kids stopped and stared at me. I was even taken aback at how sudden their response was. I seriously didn't think they would have even heard me. The kids all came back to their parents, or rather, they all ran up to me.
"Wow, an elf! You know Santa? I'm good, I promise!"
were what the kids were shouting, and a few other things. 3 kids at once. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to remember everything they said since they like to talk over each other. It took me a few moments to realize I'm still dressed as an elf. The parents look at me like I was their savior. I sighed. Well, happy kids are quieter than wild bored kids, so I smiled at the kids. Yeah, I'm Jingle, and yeah, I know Santa for sure.
"Are you really an elf? You have normal ears,"
said one of the kids. Oh, I was born with rounded ears. All elves with rounded ears get a special job. I shouldn't tell you this, but there are elves all year round. We are elves undercover, and use how we look like normal people to spy on the kids and report to Santa. Since you know he is super busy this time of year, meeting everyone and making sure all the presents are done, we keep an eye on things for him, I said, hoping the kid would buy this story.
"Oh, wow!"
The kids chimed. They bought it. And during the next 20 minutes or so, they asked me questions about Santa and stuff. I spent the time pretty much telling them about all the different things I've seen in movies about Santa. They were calmer. We got our tickets and watched the performance. After the show, I sat in the lobby to wait for the next show, and the original group of kids ended up coming to me with more kids. So between the performances, I entertained the kids with stories about Santa. They were calm, so I was cool just telling stories to the kids. Again, I got tickets and watched the show. After the performance, I met up with my friend and we were just chatting, when this elderly woman came up to me and touched my arm.
"You did a good job too. I'm pleased to see the church hired an entertainer to keep the kids from wreaking havoc before and after shows,"
said the elderly woman. The pastor was at one of the nearby tables. "Excuse me? What did you say?" said the pastor as he now put down his paper and came over.
"That I'm happy you hired an elf to amuse the children and keep them calm," said the elderly woman.
"I didn't," started the pastor. "Expect that a volunteer would be dressed as an elf. Sorry, I don't work here, I just volunteer sometimes," I said to the woman who smiled. She donated some money and left. "You don't," started the pastor. "We know you don't like elves, and we know she doesn't work here. I'll see you tomorrow. Laters," said my friend, and started to drag me off. The pastor and I do not get along, and my friend called me today asking me to show up again as an elf this year, since the pastor is already getting upset that people are calling him up to make reservations to have the elf watch their kids between performances. I claim to volunteer there when I don't, just so the church could save face, also to annoy the pastor. The church itself is okay with elves and Santa. The pastor in this story doesn't like Santa, elves, me, and a lot more things. The pastor in this was even more upset since he had to inform people that I do not work for the church, as after I left he was apparently still getting talked to about the elf entertainer. 5. My first job after university was as a software consultant under a company that handled large bespoke software solutions for big finance companies, banks, and our government. After about a year with a number of projects under my belt, I was sent on my way to a new client, an offshore admin department of a major UK bank, to work on some bespoke project for the banking system. This was approaching 10 years ago. This might be a grey area, but think of my role like the IT equivalent of a plumber to fix your shitter. The building had maybe 30 or 40 employees, and rows of desks down a long room with multiple little offices and meeting rooms adjacent. I turn up all suited and smart, meeting the manager and discussing the project. To everyone there, I'm just some early 20s youngster being escorted to an interview or something. I turn up the next day looking all greenhorn and being introduced to the IT department. The first days were pretty normal, people helping me with logins, desks, the basics of a new office job to any onlooker. I'd keep speaking to the same few IT department guys and join them on their smoking breaks. That's when a mild case of the Karen started to seep in. I was introduced to her at some point, but I had no idea who she was or what she did, and I think that irked her. Rather than ask her colleagues and find out what I was doing, she assumed I'm just the new kid and I wasn't toeing the company line. This started with a joking, "I think the new guy should do the tea runs." British office after all, I obliged. I would offer tea at least once a day, to her row of desks as well. The petty power play kept increasing with things like the Friday bacon run and, "If you're going to the printer, can you scan this for me?" She was trying to show herself as senior and that she was my superior. I think the best one was her inviting me to a company meeting she led on current business issues. I had been invited into many meetings before because part of my job is understanding the client's business. Then she started noticing things. I'd stroll in at 10:30 a.m., I'd leave at 4 p.m. I might have 2-hour lunch breaks. I was too casual, with my sharp jeans and untucked black shirt, even though the IT department guys wore tatty jeans, trainers, and t-shirts. I'd also walk outside to take personal phone calls frequently. I was a consultant who attended our own company meetings and supporting all my other projects for other clients. I'm not on their payroll. I charged them for my time. You see, Karen was a senior in the operations team, the group who is in charge of making sure all the menial business tasks are managed and clicking buttons on bespoke software that my colleagues made to basically keep this shit show afloat. Some of the guys in that team actually do keep the place together, but I don't think she did. And that's when I got accosted in kitchen. "I don't think you're taking this job very seriously. I've been keeping track of your tardiness, and I'm sure others have noticed too." I've just submitted a full briefing to your manager to let him know. In this case, the IT department actually spent 50% of their time away from their desks. So she thinks I'm playing them when they aren't around. In reality, I'm there when they are. I'm not an employee, Karen. I work for the IT consultancy company. Amusingly, she never once engaged as a human being beforehand. This shocked her. In a huff, she walks out. I think she's pissed that she's in the dark, and I'm sure she just sent a serious case of the Karen mail. Problem is, I'm under NDA because I'm working on a system that has rather large access to the information of all the banking hardware and software, and our policy is not to talk about it with anyone not directly involved. One of her team was my go-to guy for access and details. To her, my account was a basic no-access account. I'd log in, then remote onto a virtualized workstation that was out of her jurisdiction, managed by the IT guys. Here's the kicker. I think there was office politics about the email she sent out, but I didn't have a company email address to join in the fun. My IT colleagues actually noted down all the time she approached me to do menial tasks and new boy errands, to which I charged $250 per hour under admin or contingency budgets. She racked up enough costs to easily cover hiring a junior employee. The reason why she wasn't informed, as I found out later that year for a new project, was that I was building a centralized intranet service that managed all the banking server information, hardware details, licenses, permission systems, and so forth, in a way to hand control back to the qualified IT guys, and severely lighten up the redundant parts of the operations team who are frankly unqualified to manage banking infrastructure. She was in her early 50s, pushing close to a 6-figure salary. To run through a daily checklist, she wrote an Excel of jobs to delegate out to others. She essentially got paid a lot to do fuck all for years on end. Being a consultant is a funny job. A tough one at times. Some people treat you like they're knight in shining armor, as you fix all their shit or improve their daily lives. Others see you as scammers, and others see you as the horsemen of their incompetency. Karen, however, couldn't see 2 foot in front of her superiority complex, until a naive 23-year-old automated her job. She wasn't there a few months later when I came back to build upon the previous work. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, number 13, which is before 14. Yes, I did delete the video earlier, if anyone's wondering. I did get the number wrong. But since I've had to remove it and redo it anyway, I may as well take this opportunity to do something that it occurred to me last night I hadn't done for a while. Yep, this would be the second time this year. Usually only do it about twice a year. That I have a Patreon page. If you'd like to support the channel, i.e. me, then you can do so for however little or however much you'd like to a month. The link is in the description, and please don't feel obligated to do so, though. It is much appreciated, but not necessary at all. I don't do tiers like a lot of people like to do that, because the channel's daily is essentially just to help me keep things going here, help keep the lights on, as it were. But I have been, and I will update them at some point early next year. I've been uploading the audio archives of the videos so people can download them to their devices. Okay, now on with your regularly scheduled outro. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, the weather in this country is getting quite naughty. I've had high winds keeping me company as I work tonight. I only ventured out briefly earlier and I almost got soaked. I will be keeping most of the outros short on the upcoming videos, as I have many of them to make. I've got basically 3 weeks worth of videos to make, and I'm into it now. You know, my goal is 2 at a time, so I should hopefully, if all goes well, be done by the 20th, which is good, because I can then go out on the 21st, and I can get things in for Christmas dinner and the like. Not sure what I'm having for Christmas dinner, but something nice and yummy, with an equally yummy pudding of some kind. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.